are kind of the next big thing in this entire alternative food movement. One is scalability. The market's here, the desire's here. How do we scale up? I was just reading the Small Farm Quarterly that Joanna was kind enough to give me, and read there about a wonderful family farm, and they started and they went, 25 broilers, 50 broilers, 100 broilers, and 4 years later they're doing 600, and the last statement was, and that's it, we're not going to grow anymore. And somehow we can punch through that, philosophically, labor, economically. And coupled with that issue is the issue of, within the context of sustainability, the economies of scale, and how do we bump this price down? How do we bump the price down so that we're not such an elitist movement, or at least perceived to be that way? All the arguments about you get what you pay for notwithstanding. We'll deal with that. But those are a couple of things we really want to deal with toward the end of the discussion. So, with that said, let's have the lights down. Is that okay for everybody, or is it too light? Too light. I don't know how to hit, I can see the hit the arrow. All right, maybe. Okay. Polyface Farm is located on the western edge of Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, below the Mason-Dixon line. The Shenandoah Valley, if you will recall from your history lessons, was the breadbasket of the Confederacy during the War of Northern Aggression. When you do that down south, they go, yeah, get me. It's about 20 miles wide and 80 miles long, north to south. And the early settlers into the region wrote back to their families saying they were able to ride their horses through the valley and tie the grass in a knot above the horse's saddle. It was the tall grass prairie of the Mid-Atlantic region maintained by the Native Americans with fire. I hope some of you are beginning to read the book, the new book that's out. The title is 1491. It's a great book about what did the Americas look like, the year before Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1992. And so this was a manicured landscape. It was not a wilderness, not just an uninhabited area. It was a manicured landscape for buffalo, elk, pheasant, turkey, and maintained by fire. We're 100 acres of open land and 450 acres of woodland. And we believe that God's laid down an interconnected whole for us to live by, that principially these disciplines all relate to each other. One of the problems in our leftover Greco-Roman, European, Western, reductionist, linear, fragmented, compartmentalized, systematized, reductionist, it's all about me worldview. Yes, God, I hear you. What happened, boy, these reductionists, they don't take that lightly. Okay. So what we have here is this worldview in which we think that we can study ecology, we can study disciplines by taking them apart. And so I can know Jane or Tom or Michael. The way we study you is we lay you out on this table, we pull out your liver, your lungs, your heart, we pull your arteries out, we lay all these pieces on the table, and we say, meet Tom. Well, we all know that the sum, that the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts, and that's the way it is. So what we'd like to do now is take a quick little trip through our farm and how we've tried to apply an Eastern holistic, community-based, we're related, it's all about us mentality, taking the best of the West and marrying it to the best heritage, spiritual, ethical, moral dimension that comes from a faith, from a spiritual, from something bigger than ourselves type of of worldview. So if you move from the left of the screen and go to the right, there's probably a cursor on here, but anyway, field, forest, creek, field, forest, ponds, field, forest, ponds, field. The three greater environments are open land, forest land, and water. And the more we can intersect them, the greater the diversity of plant and animal life, the greater the diversity, the more checks and balances we have in the system. Now, when everything is linked and cycled, it's hard to know where to start. So we're going to go progressively through this and get to livestock and different things. But we're going to start with the forest. Now, in order for you to know where I'm coming from, it's always good to pigeonhole a speaker early so you can kind of, dismiss the chaff and keep the good stuff. So to get you aware of my pigeonhole, let me tell you my pigeonhole. I'm a Christian, libertarian, environmentalist, capitalist. Okay? So now you understand exactly where I'm coming from on every issue. And so one of the things about capitalism is that how do you create value? You create value. How do you create stewardship? Is you create stewardship with value. And so one of the problems with woodlots is there's no value there. And because there's no value there, there's no stewardship there. Well, how do you create value in a woodlot in order to create stewardship? Well, we sell a lot of firewood. In our area, firewood sells for about $50 a pickup load, cut, split, and delivered. You've got an hour to cut it, an hour to split it, an hour to deliver it. So you've got 3 person hours in that load, and then you've got $15 of overhead because you've got to drive somewhere, you've got to get chainsaw, gas, repair the back window of a pickup truck, you threw the piece of firewood through, those kinds of things, which after you take your $50 minus your 15 to 20 in overhead, you're left with about 30 bucks divided by your 3 man hours, person hours, sorry, I want to make sense in here, person hours. So now we've got 3 hours divided by 30 gives us what? Return to labor. $10 an hour. Okay. What we do is we sell that same pickup load, non-split, non-delivered, U-Haul, come to the farm and pick it up for $25. We've only got $5 worth of overhead because we didn't have to deliver it anywhere. We didn't have to go anywhere with this. We got $5 in overhead. And we've got 1 hour in it. So by not splitting it and not delivering it, we sell that load for $25 for 1 hour, which is what return to labor. 20 bucks an hour. We've just doubled that return to labor. One of the things that's important to understand is we've got to learn where our niche is, where our competitive niche is, and stay there. If we move out of our competitive unfair advantage, out of our niche, we're not going to get anywhere. The other thing is that in our community, I don't know if it's like that up here, but in our community, all the men are trying to justify owning a pickup truck to their wives. And so we give them a reason to own that pickup truck. They got to go out and get firewood. We want to meet the whole person, their marital needs, their emotional needs, all those kinds of things. Then we take the saw logs out with our multiple use equipment. Now this is another significant principle. One of the biggest problems in American agriculture today is the single use infrastructure that locks the next generation into the same paradigm even when it becomes obsolete. What happens is when we have large single-use depreciable infrastructure, the next generation can't use it for anything else. It's hard to retrofit. You're emotionally and economically in bondage to that infrastructure. And what does a person want to do when they feel in bondage? Flee, right? And are young people fleeing farms? Yes, have been for some time, all right? So one of the ways to keep the young people on the farm and to create new opportunities is to have multiple use equipment and infrastructure that can be used for multiple things to create additional options. Then we bring the logs down and run them on our bandsaw mill, turn that into lumber. Worldwide, the difference between commodity and retail on lumber averages 1,000%. A tenfold increase between stumpage and what you buy down at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, the retail price. And so by taking these logs and milling them ourselves into lumber, we've just created a tenfold increase in the value of that woodland. Does that make sense? Suddenly, we don't want to run the cows through that woodland and destroy the trees and create impaction problems on those trees. We want those trees to be healthy, so we fence out the cows. That's how you create the stewardship of the resource, by adding the value. Now, the branches that we can all stack with the butts facing one direction, running through our machine, our chipper. Dad always called this our communist machine because it makes them all the same size. And then that becomes the carbon base for the barn, for the hay shed when we feed hay in the wintertime. When we're feeding animals, we always want to bring the animals to the feed, not the feed to the animals. So, you know, in our area, I'm sure it's the same way up here. It's like all the farmers trying to be, you know, sadistic and see how cold it can get and still start the diesel tractor. Or during the late February, early March fall period, let's see how many of the neighbors' tractors we can hook together to pull mine out of the mud, you know, delivering the hay out in the field. Rather, we want to protect those fields from the hay. Now, here's from the impaction of the equipment. The other thing is that that cow is putting out 50 pounds of material out her back end every day. I've always thought it was pretty cool that a cow that will eat 28 pounds of hay gives me 50 pounds of goodies out of her back end. Who says the perpetual motion machine hasn't been invented? All right. But the problem is that when that material out the back end hits dormant, hibernating soil, it doesn't get used. It doesn't get metabolized. Now, let me ask you, if I woke you up at 2 o'clock tomorrow morning, after midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, right, and I pried your mouth, I mean, chances are you'll be sleeping, right? Well, I don't know, you'll be so excited after this presentation of noise goes. But let's assume it's a normal night, okay? And you're sleeping soundly, and I go in and I pry your mouth open, put a funnel in, and stuff Thanksgiving dinner down your mouth. What's going to happen about 3 o'clock? You know, it's all going to go, it's not going to be metabolized. Well, that's what happens in the soil when we apply amendments, organic, inorganic, I don't care what it is, during that dormant soil hibernation period. And that's why good researchers encourage farmers not to spread material in the dormant season. Okay? Well, we don't want to do that. We want to hold that in suspension during that winter season. So we do that by going to a deep bedding approach. And you can see here the ground, you know, the ground level, wherever it is, and the buildup of the bedding pack. So we're adding carbon. That carbon now is linking up with this volatile nutrient coming out of the back end of the cow. If it gets wet, it wants to leach into the groundwater. If it gets dry, it wants to vaporize into the air. We use a feeder gate that we can raise and lower 4 feet to accommodate this bedding buildup, because the deeper the bedding is, the more microbial life it grows. This bedding is fermenting because the heavy cows are chomping out the oxygen, so this becomes a big fermenting vat. That fermenting creates its own molds. Those molds exude natural antibiotics. I mean, penicillin is mold, right? And so you can stop scours in baby calves, mastitis in lactating cows, coccidiosis in poultry. There are all sorts of benefits to this deep living, fermenting bedding pattern. Now, you know, so the cows are eating through this nice clean gate that's cantilevered, and also they can't back up to it, manure into the hay. So it's a clean box, it's a clean plate. A lot of times people think all these organic farmers, you know, it's just, you know, men grow ponytails and wear sandals and run naked through the woods on moonlit nights, and the women don't shave their legs, you know, and everybody just kind of sits back and says, not your all, you know, let nature take its course. Well, if we're not going to do the negatives that require us to use systemic grubicides and ivermectin and all the things that make the meat so bad it kills all the bugs, if we're not going to do that, we've got to institute positive hygienic sanitary modeling to make up the difference. It's not enough to just say no, no, no. Sometimes you have to say yes, yes, yes. And so that's what the gate allows us to do, the head of the gate. Now, as that bedding pack builds, we add corn to it, whole-shelled corn. That corn's not for the cows. That corn is to ferment in that bedding pack. So when the cows come out in the spring, we've got this 3 to 4 foot deep bedding pack full of all this fermented corn. Well, we don't want to spread that raw material and that fermented material out on the ground. We want it to go through an aerobic composting process. And so when the cows come out, we go in with the pigorators. And the pigorators then go through this. You better watch out because it's coming right at you. And they go through there like a big egg beater and inject the oxygen in that bedding pack and convert it from anaerobic to aerobic compost. Now, why is it that farmers don't like to do large-scale composting? What's the big argument against large-scale composting? Materials handling. Sure, it's all that materials handling. But you know what? If you start using appreciating livestock to do the work, suddenly the profit potential becomes size neutral because you don't have to do the volume to pay for the depreciable for the infrastructure that rusts, and depreciates. I mean, we're buying tractors for $50 and selling them for $400. That's the way I like to buy a tractor. And you know what? And the pigs, they don't need their oil change. They don't need spare parts. They all can start every time you turn the key. They start. And, you know, for labor, they don't even ask for minimum wage. They don't care if there's Democrats or Republicans in the White House. I mean, and what a retirement program. When you're done with them, you eat them. So that makes a Social Security problem. So letting the animals do the work completely changes the economics of the large-scale composting. You know what else? They love to do it. We're not asking them to do anything they don't like. This is hog heaven. Okay? This is hog heaven. And it allows us to use that pig in a way that honors and respects its pigness. And that's the foundational principle for nutritional food and ecological everything, is to allow every single plant and animal to have a habitat that allows it to fully express its physiological distinctiveness. You're the most satisfied. You're the most fulfilled. You're the most an asset to our culture when you fully express your Tomness, your Janeness, your Maryness. Right? Well, the animals are the same way. And so if we can respect them to allow them to fully use their distinctives, they become then co-laborers with us. They're not just piles of inanimate atomic structure. I mean, to the average, industrial agriculturalist today, that mindset looks at all of this wonderful, marvelous, mysterious life around us and just says, oh, that pig, oh, that's just animal protein. That's a pile of protoplasmic, molecular, or electrons, protons, and neutrons. And we can manipulate that, move that structure around, and we can do whatever we can creatively conceive to do without any ethical boundaries, because after all, it's just no more living than a copper widget or an extruded plastic doll. And a culture that takes that view toward its life and toward the least of these will take that view toward you and me and other cultures that we don't understand, and other peoples. The foundation of a culture that respects your individuality and mine, that allows us to use our own individual gifts and talents, is predicated on an appreciation for a respect and an honor of the most defenseless parts of life that we're surrounded with. That's powerful. And it shows how our philosophical view toward life, toward what's around us, affects everything that we do, our policy, our everything. Okay. So the pigs do this wonderful work. People say, well, boy, you sure go to a lot of effort to capture all this manure, and you're into all the composting and all this stuff. Say, yep, you better believe it. I don't know what yours look like. That's what mine looks like. Part of our problem is we treated our soil like dirt, and our manure we call waste. It ought to be called black gold or something. But the point is that the weak link on our farms is not somebody else's tractor, somebody else's genetics, somebody else's infrastructure, somebody else's wife or husband, or somebody else's education, or whatever. The weak link is between our ears. It's always between our ears. And the problem is we don't have enough tools in our box. See, when the only tool in your box is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So that's what we've got, is the only tool in our box is industrial technology. So when we have E. coli problems on our beef, we don't even think about changing to a grass-based herbivore system so we don't have acidosis in the rumen that changes the mutated the E. coli to make it deadly to us. Instead, what's our solution? It's irradiation, so at least we can eat sterile poop. I mean, that's the mentality. It's amazing how few tools are in the industrialist box. But Albert Einstein said you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. You know, if what we're dealing with here are problems that have been created by the industrial agriculture sector, maybe some of these answers are not industrial, are not more of the same. And especially when you start fooling around with some of this stuff, it has unintended consequences. You know, like mad cow, you feed dead cows to cows, things like that. So when the compost all comes out, then we throw poultry netting around it, and we can grow chickens in there for all the people that are fleeing the urban Dilbert cubicle at the end of an expressway, being a cog in a multinational corporate wheel. And they're coming to the countryside, buying 5-acre residential estates, and they want 5 chickens for the backyard. And we supply that need. Oh, if you don't like chickens in there, you have pigs in there. The point is, if you're going to have infrastructure, keep it generating cash flow throughout the season with other critters. And then the pigs can come out into pig pastures. These are 2-acre divided into 1/4-acre lots. They get GMO grain, and they get their salad bar, so they get to move around and exercise and make their own decision on whether they want to eat salad or whether they want to eat GMO-free grain. And the pig makes that choice, cafeteria style. We trust that pig to be a successful pig. And what this does over time is create this beautiful savanna landscape that natural succession covers up and moves forward. Now we go to perennial prairie polycultures, and we look at the grass and we say, well, you know, how did this grass move forward? You know, how are the prairies handled? Well, they're handled by large herbivores, by cattle, by bison, by wildebeest, dik-diks, caribou, okay? Well, when you study herbivores around the world, you notice 3 things. One is they're always mobbed up. Why is that? Predator protection, okay? Think about a wildebeest on the Serengeti, okay? That's what we're looking at. All right, they're mobbed up for predator protection. Number 2 is they're always moving. They don't stay in the same place, they don't stay in the same field. They move, they have a migratory pattern, okay? And the third thing is they eat forage. They don't eat silage, they don't eat grain, and they sure as dickens don't eat meat, okay? And so we look at nature and we take that as that boilerplate, as a template. We cut around it and we lay that template down on our commercial domestic production and say, how can we most closely approximate this natural model? Lo and behold, here it is. Okay? Give the cows a fresh salad bar every single day using portable electric fencing. And so we divvy the farm up into little paddocks, and we're moving this fence every day. And so these cows, every day, they move to a fresh paddock. We have not planted a grass seed. We've not bought an ounce of chemical fertilizer since we came in 1961. It's almost 50 years, okay? It works. And our farm, when I was, 15, 14 years old, we ran out of hay, had to buy hay for 10 cows. Today, we have over 100 and have plenty of feed. The land will heal. I mean, I can show you places the size of this room that used to be just bare shale, and now there's 8 inches of soil on it. Okay? It gives you goosebumps to realize, isn't it great that life can heal? I mean, and it's not just physical, emotionally, spiritually. I mean, isn't it wonderful that that living things can heal? When a bearing goes bad in the wheel of your car, it doesn't get any better. If you can't go out and pray over it and say, please be healed, it doesn't heal. Okay? But fortunately, all aspects of this thing that we call life have that ability to heal. How grateful we should be for that. So, the land can heal. The bottom line for us now is in our county, the average cow days per acre. A cow day is what? 1 cow will eat 1 day. Okay? The average cow days in our county is about 80 cow days per acre. People figure, you know, they're going to run about 5 acres per cow per year. That includes the hay for winter feed. We're averaging 400 cow days per acre. Folks, there's no world population problem. We rent 3 farms. Every one of them we go in and we put in $25 an acre worth of water line and electric fencing and double the production in the very first year. Well, if you can double the production for $25 an acre worth of managed controlled infrastructure, that's equivalent to buying land for $25 an acre, right? Pretty cheap land. So the weak link is the management. The electric fence is the tool. That allows us to move those cows every day to a new spot. So what this is using technology, using techno-glitzy innovation to allow us to mimic the natural pattern. And that's technology put to good use. There's no reason to use technology to adulterate, to run roughshod over the natural principle. All we're trying to do is enhance, as good stewards, what nature does. This is in the winter. This is 80 dry cows on half an acre. These are dry cows. They don't need that green feed. All they need is the box and a spoonful of ice cream. They stay fine. But this shows, you know, the different times of the year. This is rental ground. Again, this is solar energy, solar run. Just cows, grass, forage, electric fence, water line. It can be very simple. It doesn't have to be complex. Now those cows like to shade up under trees, which become incubators for pathogens. So we have a 1,000 square foot portable shelter that moves around like a portable shade tree with the cows and moves the pasture droppings around in the field. Water becomes a situation. So we've built 12 or 13 ponds, but you notice we fence the cows out so they don't become hippopotami. And we have this wonderful water-based hydrologic plant life. You see sumac and milkweed there, cattails, goldenrod there around the pond. And so you get this wonderful riparian area protected that we can pump out of, or we have other ponds we built with gravity feed. We have 5 miles of water line that gravity feeds from a pond, so we have 80 psi fresh water on the whole place with no pumps, no electricity, no nothing, just using gravity. These are the kinds of infrastructure that you put in to build forgiveness in the landscape. See, part of our responsibility as stewards of the landscape is to build forgiveness into it. See, the fact is that insects, bugs, low prices, tornadoes, hurricanes, drought, those kind of things are going to happen. There's nothing we can do about that. But our responsibility is to, using creativity, is to build additional resilience into it. What's happened, though, in industrial agriculture is we continue building less and less resilience into it to the point where we can't even let people come on our farms because they might bring a virus that will infect the scientifically based concentration camp fecal inhumane particulate house. Okay? And so when we move toward a forgiveness type of agriculture, it becomes more resilient, more able to withstand the vagaries of nature and price and everything else. I mean, the mentality among the powers that be right now is that disease is kind of like one of the, like a fairy that just flips around willy-nilly and decides, oh, I think I'll just land here. As if there's nothing here that we can do to keep the fairy pathogen away. And I would suggest that there are all sorts of things that we can do to keep the pathogens away, and it means building up the immune system in our animals by mimicking natural patterns. So we can use that water for irrigation water, keep the grass growing even in a drought situation. Now those cows drop a calling card. And that calling card is where the pathogens proliferate. So we look at nature, and we say, before Merck Pharmaceuticals and Johnson & Johnson and everybody came along, how in the world did these cows survive? I mean, for the most people today, you can't even imagine that these cows survived before all the white-coated labs came along. And so we look at nature as the pattern, say, how does this stuff survive? And we see birds. So we have the eggmobiles. These are 900 layers that come out, free range out from these portable eggmobiles. So we follow the cows with the eggmobiles. The chickens then go through, scratch out the cow patties, incorporate them into the soil, eat out the fly larvae, turn the crickets and the bugs and all that into eggs, so that instead of giving the cows through the corral and the head gate, losing our religion and all that stuff, putting the cows through the head gate, instead we collect $15,000 worth of eggs as a byproduct of the pasture sanitation program. So economically, what this symbiosis does is it allows us as a small farmer to earn so much money, we got to hire somebody to take it to the bank. All right? But that's how these systems work, is to integrate rather than segregate. Now this is pastured egg production. So we have the egg mobile for pasture sanitation, for pastured egg production. This is 1,000 layers surrounded by this real high-tech, it's a polyethylene fencing with stainless steel threads woven through it. This stuff is high-tech, it's NASA stuff. It's only been out for like, 20 years. It couldn't even be developed until computer technology allowed us to shorten the spark of an energizer from about 0.04 of a second down to 0.004 of a second, so that there wasn't enough resistance to melt the polyethylene. This is high-tech stuff, but it allows us to keep out black bears and foxes and possums and all that from the chickens. And then the hoop houses, we just pull them along, move them every couple of days to a fresh pasture paddock, and produce eggs on a large volume, large scale. In the winter, they go into these hoop houses. You see rabbits up above, chickens underneath, and then you can add pigs to it. So you got pigs and chickens and rabbits, and you've got all this different kinds of speciation in a single facility. Well, the fact is that almost all pathogens are species specific. Very few of them are cross-speciated. So in the real world of pathogenicity, and all of you, scientists, please just enjoy the story and bear with me. Here's what happens. Those pathogens are like little bitty microbes. I mean, in the microscopic world, what you've got is basically a marsh with these little critters slogging around in this kind of marsh, and water is how they move around. Okay, and so you've got this chicken pathogen that hatches out in a little chicken turd, and we'll call him Harry, and over here a little ways, which is it's far enough to see in the microbial world. It might be like a millimeter away, but he spies this really, really cute Matilda over here. Okay, and Harry, whoo, boy, she's hot. Let's get married. And well, now remember, in this world of microbial life, they have to get born, learn to walk, go to kindergarten, get beat up by the school bully, teased about their big ears, go to middle school, high school, college, get a job, marry, have babies, become grandparents, retire. They have to do all that in 48 hours. Okay? All that in 48 hours. So, they grow up, Harry and Matilda, they get together and they say, hey, there's a real pretty hill right over there. We'll build a house on, make babies. That'd be cool. So they start their trudge, but it's okay. They start over, so her biological clock has time on it, And they start over there, and it takes them about 10 microbial years to get over there, but they finally get over there, and so they get ready to set up housekeeping, and Harry suddenly realizes, we're dead. It's a rabbit turd. And they're chicken turds. And they die. And that's the real life of the pathogenicity that's going in here. This is what we call creating pathogen cul-de-sacs. Okay? There's not enough time to go find another chicken turd, so they just die. All right? And so that's the way these things work, and that's the way these systems work. So you can have a lot of production in a single facility without all the negatives, because you're running multi-speciation. And in the spring, when all the animals come out, you plant vegetables in there and grow hundreds of dollars worth of vegetables right into that new compost from the bedding from the animals that was vacated. We do run an apprenticeship program to teach these principles to young people, because they're not taught in a lot of other places. And then we go to vineyard. This is turkeys under grapevines. All right, another symbiotic effect. Racking house rabbits above chickens. If you don't like chickens, you can have pigs, but the idea is you stack, you multi-speciate, and then the rabbits go out on pasture, get moved along in a hairpin that goes up the end of the field, makes a hairpin turn. And then we do seminars in the summertime. There's our son Daniel teaching attendees how to rabbit. Not done on Easter, by the way. And then we go to pastured poultry. They come in at a day old, little fresh chicks, get a lot of TLC, go out into floorless, field shelters that we move every day to a fresh spot, so you can see where it was yesterday. We move it to the next spot. We did about 12,000 of these last year, run about 500 per acre, moving them every single day to a fresh salad bar to stimulate the ingestion of green material. Everything that we do is to stimulate the ingestion of green material, because it is the green material, it's the salad bar that creates the omega-3, omega-6 ratio, that creates the polyunsaturated fats, the saturated fat, that makes the riboflavin go up through the roof, that makes the taste and texture and everything else work. The nutritional profile completely changes with the green material. Now we go to turkeys. Turkeys like to walk a little more, so they're again in the same kind of netting situation, and they graze up to 50% of their diet when they get to this size off the pasture. This is the gobbledygook. It's a portable hoop house called gobbledygook, and we pull it along every day, move the turkeys into a fresh area, close the fence behind so you can see where they were, you see closing the fence where they are today, and it's beautiful. And a good food system should be aromatically and aesthetically pleasant. You know, our senses, we have our senses for a reason. You know, if you walk in and something stinks, there's something wrong with that. I mean, how do you know if you've got a wound that it's infected? First thing you can do is you can smell it, right? You smell the infection. Well, there's a reason why we have our senses. And our belief is that a food system, from production to processing to marketing to the dinner plate, should be aesthetically and aromatically pleasant. And if it's not, there's something wrong with it. And if those two systems, if those two principles were applied to our food system in this nation, it would fundamentally change the way our nation produces its food if it had to be aesthetically and aromatically pleasant. And it's got to be family friendly. So this kind of farming is child friendly, family friendly. I don't care what we do until we create an agricultural paradigm that the young people want to be involved in. We will not have a sustainable agriculture. That's the ultimate test. I'm not saying every farm child has to stay on the farm. Not that at all. What I am suggesting, though, is that it should be an environment that a lot of them would like to stay on and want to be there, and the opportunities would be there for them to stay. So that's the farm of the 21st century. You know, it's neighbor-friendly, animal-friendly. I don't do any of the work. The animals do all the work. I'm just a choreographer, making sure that all the animals are dancing at the right place at the right time. Then we process right there on farm in our little open-air facility. It lets the fresh air and sunshine come through, the birds chirp, and you can actually see what's going on in nature. And it makes a completely different kind of bird, unusual in the world. And then we compost all the guts. We don't grind them up and feed them back to the chickens like the industry does. And they wonder why they got pathogens. We compost them right there and use that as a fertilizer for the pasture fields. When it's over, it's over. I come up and visit with you wonderful people. So there's a seasonality to this. There's a sprint time and there's a down time. There's an exertion time and a recuperation time. And that movement through the seasons of the farm create emotional encouragement, so that so that there's time to think about it. What we've done, though, is we've created a very person-unfriendly kind of agriculture, and I would suggest, I think that this is a fascinating concept, that one of the most intimate things outside the act of marriage, one of the most intimate things that we do as humans is eat. I mean, we're taking this and we're eating it. We're putting it in our bodies. It's a fairly intimate thing that we do. Okay? And so what we have today, though, is a food system that applauds itself in not having anybody involved. We want fewer farmers. We want stinkier farms. We don't want anybody involved in the processing, at least nobody from our country involved in the processing. And so we want to push all the neighbors away, push all the community people away, push you and I away, and then suddenly we put this plate of food down and say, "Ah, come and dine." I mean, it's like food prostitution, you know? Where's the romance? We're supposed to have this courtship with this meal, this connection, and have some integrity of this food and accountability that comes with a dating deal to have this intimate experience. And instead, it's so human unfriendly. We don't want anybody And part of that is creating anti-person type environments on our farms. Stop, do not enter. This is for biosecurity. Okay. You might bring in something that will affect our animals. Well, why don't we have our animals in such an immunologically enhanced arena that they're not susceptible to these diseases? And so we want people to come. We want to build bridges instead of barriers and let folks from the city come out and get in touch with their food, build a link to the land, a connection to their food supply, a transparency of the food system so that they can partake and enjoy being romanced into their meal. And that creates ultimate integrity and accountability in the system, to romp the fields, to make their memories, and to dance with the music of nature that they're seeing, hearing, sensing in a very visceral way as they come to the farm. So we do field days. We do food fairs. We do all sorts of things to get people in touch with their food. One of the funnest things that we do is on-site cooking of sausage to give samples to the children of vegetarians. You can get to people pretty well that way. And we do metropolitan buying club drops in our marketing. We collaborate with other specialty producers in the area to add their artisanal products to our delivery vehicle so that there's a collaboration of artisanal farmers in the area that can jump on a single delivery vehicle. Again, part of the scalable innovation. We bring our chefs out to the farm to a chef appreciation day here, put them on a hay wagon, build the loyalty, build the connection, create the story that they can tell so that there is something there for the next generation, and there's a story that can be passed down through the generations to romance the next generation of the farmers. You know what? You look at this and you got it all figured out. You don't have it all figured out. I mean, good night. Everybody has a bad day once in a while. Okay? But you know, if you will continue to pursue the truth and pursue righteousness, pursue the high moral road and a value system that creates a sacredness in your objectives and a sacredness in your business and a sacredness to the land, sure enough, you will be blessed above what you can imagine. You will find your answers for, as the 4-H motto says, my community, my country, my world. Indeed, you will find your emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental pot of gold at the end of the rainbow of your life as you express and you find that righteous niche to fill and to devote your life to. May each of us aspire to do that as we express our distinctives throughout our life. Thank you for taking a sit down tour of Polyface. Come and see us sometime. Okay. Okay. Now, just a couple thoughts on scalability and price. One of the, and we're going to take questions. I'm going to just do this about 5 minutes here. Okay. The deal is, what we've got today is we've got a burgeoning demand for this kind of food. The taste, the texture, the quality speaks for itself. It's distinctive. All of us that have tasted this kind of food, you know, we know what it is, okay? And consumers, eaters, patrons, okay, who have eaten it know what it is, all right? And they want more of it. We're experiencing that. A lot of other people are experiencing that. How do we move this mainstream? I mean, I just was yesterday talking with the Chipotle restaurant chain, all the general managers of the Mid-Atlantic region. And they're wanting, you know, pastured poultry and grass-fed beef and everything. I just had an attorney who represents McDonald's Corporation down about 2 months ago. And they're coming back from McDonald's second. They want to offer a grass-fed hamburger. Can you imagine? Okay? So things, as they say, they are changing. Okay? What's happened is that there is a language being spoken by nature out of the crumbling industrial infrastructure. And that language is those little italicized, squiggly words we've all learned how to say in the last, 20 years. The word even in the lexicon 20 years ago, words like Campylobacter, Pfiesteria, E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, bovine spongiform encephalopathy. I mean, those of us that are over 40 didn't even know those words 20 years ago. Am I right? I mean, they weren't even in the lexicon. Well, what this is, folks, is this is nature screaming to our culture, enough! You know, maybe putting 10 sows in a structure was okay? Or 50 chickens in a chicken house or whatever. But just because 50 was good, is 100 better, 1,000 better, 5,000 better, 10,000 better, 15,000 better? I mean, you know, where does it end? And if you read Paradigms by Joel Arthur Barker, one of the classic axioms of paradigms is that every paradigm exceeds its point of efficiency. And it's always most collapsible, it's always at the point of collapse when it appears to be perfected. Okay? Well, we've got a lot of promises coming from the industrial ag sector that's going to cure everything. I mean, we're going to cure cancer with biotech. Biotech is going to cure everything that ails us. You know, we're all going to live to 1,000 years old, and everything that you know, we're going to grow our own eyes. We're going to do all this and that and the other. I mean, it's amazing the promises that we're going to. And now we've got cloned cows supposedly that aren't going to get mad cow because we've taken the proteins away that are susceptible to the prions. You know, number one, I don't believe it. But number two is, I'm very skeptical of some of these scientific things, because if you'll go back to the language of the 50s, when we were promised to cure the world of everything that was negative at that time through the greening, through the chemical approach, remember that? Well, I mean, we were gonna solve all hunger if we all just used, you know, super ultra phosphate. We were gonna solve all bug problems if we just sprayed enough DDT on, you know, and then this unintended consequence of sterile frogs, dead owls and hawks and legless tadpoles, you know, suddenly got the environmental sciences people all of a sudden in a great big dither and a quiver, and now we don't use it anymore, so there's these unintended consequences. And of course, we know now with genetic engineering, for example, the same test that Monsanto used to convince FDA that genetically engineered potatoes were fine for human consumption, they used old, mature rats to do the studies. When the same studies were duplicated in Scotland with juvenile rats, they had all sorts of social problems, they had brain development problems, kidney development problems, liver development problems, all sorts of problems using juvenile rats. Okay? So we're seeing some pretty big unintended consequences and oopses. And so what's happened is that as the industrial system screams for a change, there are some people in the culture that are listening, especially moms. They're the ones that sit with their kids at the doctor's office. Because you see, this listening to nature thing thrives on people who listen to nurturing. See, it's not masculine for a man to go out in the field and come back in his, you know, at the end of the day, and his wife looks at that big hunk of a man, you know, and says, "Well, Harry, you know, what did you do today?" And Harry says, "Oh, I made the cows happy." I mean, that's just not machismo, you know. It's a lot more masculine to say, "Man, I burned 100 gallons of diesel fuel, and I ripped up 40 acres of grass, and I killed 1 million earthworms, and I poured Ivermectin on the backs of 100 calcium bruises up my leg. Smell the grease," you know. That's masculine. And so nobody's listening to nature because it's not nurturing. We're still in the conquistador business. Okay? We're still in the conquistador mentality. And once we can flip over that and actually sit and listen to what the cows are saying and the pigs are saying and life is saying from a holistic standpoint that we're all a community, then suddenly our paradigm, our worldview, and our solutions change from being very technologically oriented to a technological problem to being holistically oriented to a technological problem. And so the culture is beginning to move, but it's moving a lot faster than agriculture because agriculture has always been very, very conservative. I mean, agriculture was the last component of the culture to join the information age. It's just now coming out of the industrial age. Okay? And those paradigms don't change quickly. And so how do we scale up? How do we move to this marketing thing so that people can actually acquire this food in a way that creates economies of scale. One of the ways is to run integrated operations. See, our problem is that even in the organic movement, we're not integrating animals and plants. We're not integrating chickens under orchard. We're not integrating composting with pigs. You know, we're selling $15,000 compost turners to do on-farm composting. So we have a livestock, we essentially have an organic concentrated animal feeding operation running a methane digester or a composting operation with petroleum. Okay? Well, what that does is that it simply substitutes an organic industrial for a non-organic industrial. I don't know. You use whatever terminology you want to. I don't know what the terminology is, but you see what I'm saying. And the big answers are where we completely change the production model and we begin integrating the animals with the pigs, the animals and the plants, so that they integrate, so that the vegetable operation enjoys the compost generated by the solar-powered pasture to run the vegetable operation, and so that we don't feed grain to herbivores. I mean, 70% of the row crop acreage in the U.S. grows grain for herbivores. Think of what it would do. This is a great, why doesn't somebody do this for a master season? Think of all the impact it would be in our culture if 70% of the row crop acreage in the U.S. were returned to perennial prairie polyculture under intensive grazing management. What it would do to erosion, to chemical usage, to the power of the grain cartels, to whatever. I mean, 30% grows grain for pigs, poultry, and people. Okay, that's all right. Keep that. But the 70% doesn't have to be done. And it's those kinds of really fundamental changes that allow us to scale forward in meeting this market demand. So on our farm, we are the least expensive alternative food in the whole region. Everybody complains about us being the floor of the market. Well, there's something about being the lowest price and the best product that it generates sales. And we kind of like the notion that you don't have to be a doctor, an attorney, or some wealthy millionaire to afford our food. Okay? And so there's a great satisfaction in that. And so as we scale up, then we can amalgamate, we can animals, we can create the symbiosis, we can stack these different, the eggmobile, the turkeys, the broilers, the cows on that same acreage at different times of the year, so that they ratchet up the income per acre, and suddenly we're using those resources more completely throughout the year. Well, suddenly as we're using those resources more completely throughout the year with holic enterprises, complementary enterprises, now you can afford to have labor because you have a year-round labor need. And so you stack winter labor onto the summer labor, and it allows you to have cash flow and to have labor flow. And then when you add neighbors to amalgamate from neighbors on a distribution network, then suddenly you have enough distribution to go forward with economies of scale, so that instead of peddling stuff around in the trunk of our car, we're peddling stuff in a 1.5-ton chassis vehicle. Okay? And then you get economies of scale. I'm going to stop right there. Questions, comments, discussion. What's on your mind? Yes?
I actually have 3 questions. One is, how do you handle the grubs question?
How do
you handle the grubs?
Grubs.
With cattle.
With cattle, okay.
Is it? And
you're talking about like heel fly warbles?
Yeah.
Heel fly warbles. The eggmobile.
That's clear enough of them up to.
Absolutely. Yeah, those big old 1-inch grubs, when they roll out on the ground in the springtime,
right.
The chickens, boy, that's Breyer's ice cream. That's ready to go, boy. That's good stuff.
I mean, you control them well enough so that you don't have any injuries.
We don't have a single one. No, don't have a single one. Great. In fact, that would be another thing that we need to do is to find a a specialty market for a really clean hide. I'm sure there's a premium paid for it. Of course,
It should be because it's a whole.
yeah, because the slaughterhouse, you know, they just keep it. But you know, that's the kind of thing that as you develop the volume, you know, once you move up to where you're doing 1,000 hides, then suddenly you've got something that you can negotiate with. The problem is so much of this movement is so small, we don't have any bargaining power.
Well, even on the farm, if we, in a feedlot, we treat everything with your friend I know that.
Yeah.
But we do have clean hides.
Right.
And we don't get any premium.
Right. Right.
And the second is, do you have a selenium problem? Do you have to feed? What about minerals? Do you add selenium?
Yeah, we add kelp meal. Our minerals are kelp meal and Planter's tube, and that's a trace mineral, and redmond salt, which is a mine out of Utah, and Fertrell, the poultry NutriBalancer.
Okay.
And we mix all that together.
And what do you think about ethanol?
What do I think about ethanol?
I mean, we're going to be planting one coast to the other for ethanol.
Yeah, ethanol. I know one thing is making the price of corn go through the roof.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Let me answer it this way. If everybody here understands that agriculture uses as much energy, petroleum, as all transportation in the U.S. You got that? Agriculture and transportation are on a par with energy use. Okay? If we would go to a grass-based agriculture, we could probably cut petroleum use in this country by 20%. Now, I haven't seen 20% used by anybody for these alternative fuels. I mean, we go apoplectic and turn black flips when somebody suggests something that can displace 1.5%, right? 2%. Okay? We don't even think in terms of 20%. And the beauty of this is that a grass-based agriculture could be instituted within 2 or 3 years. You know, I mean, we have the knowledge, it's not that big a deal. Okay? All you do is plant grass everywhere, start doing controlled grazing, and you can grow more milk and meat. So, you know, the whole energy problem, in my view, is because it's a huge issue because we haven't even thought about it for so long. I mean, Sir Albert Howard in the wherever he wrote an agricultural testament in 1945, he envisioned what he called diamond cities. Okay? So you put your houses, I hate to even mess up this real nice blackboard, but what he envisioned were these diamond villages, okay? And all the houses, I'm not an artist here. All the houses face south, so all of them have a southern exposure for solar, for passive solar, and then this acre or acre and a half inside, all of these houses hire a master gardener to compost their night soil, so now you don't have a sewage-based, a water-based sewage system. He composts that, he runs some chickens, and he raises all the produce for these 25 houses that are all doing solar gain, and it becomes a totally recycled network. There's no piping, okay? And he said that's what we'll see in the next 30 years. Is all these garden villages, sprout up all over the world. Well, the poor guy, he was brilliant, but he wasn't a prophet, unfortunately. And we don't see that. So all I'm suggesting is, like down in our area, are you having any development up here? That's a funny question. Everywhere I go, everybody's talking about development. We have all this development. We have all these stick houses going up. Nobody even thinks about a southern exposure. They don't even think about it. Doesn't even cross their mind. Let alone think about composting human excrement or that sort of thing. You know what the most efficacious starchy plant for extracting alcohol fuel is? It's cattails. The tubers under cattails. You've seen cattails, how they grow. Cattails will make these, this white layer of interlaced starchy tubers. It's like 10 times more efficacious in pounds of material per gallon of alcohol produced than corn. So what we need to do is run all of our metropolitan sewage into shallow concrete troughs with bulrushes using hydrologic plants that we can shave the top off as it uses the nitrogen from the sewage, compost that for running our community gardens and our production settings, and then when the tubers build up to 8 to 12 inches, then we just roll it. It rolls up like a blanket. We make alcohol out of that and run the city, so the city generates its own fertilizer, it runs its own fuel from the tuber, and it all works together. But that sort of thing is, we've invested so much time and energy and money in building this aircraft carrier that we call modern America, that it's really hard to turn it around. Okay? And so, the whole energy question to me is, well, I'm ready for the crash. Bring it on. As far as I'm concerned, the sooner gas goes to $10 a gallon, the sooner we become really good. And I took since I was going on this trip, I had to take my pickup truck into the mechanic, do some brake work for inspection next month. And he said, the PT Cruiser? Everybody know about the PT Cruiser? He said, in the American market, that PT Cruiser gets about 18, 19, 20 miles a gallon. Okay? He said the same car sold in a foreign country gets 80 miles a gallon. Same plant, same vehicle, just difference in carburation. Foreign market, American market. Okay? Folks, the energy problem, is a manufactured problem. In fact, almost all of our problems are manufactured problems. The avian influenza problem is a manufactured problem. Mad cow is a manufactured problem. E. coli is a manufactured problem. Virtually all problems that we have that are like, chronic